Niklsun here, and welcome to Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. I'm your host, and on this show, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'll be going over all of the day's movie news and going over what it means for the production in general, such as casting decisions, trailer announcements, director announcements, things like that. So, without any further ado, let's get started with today's Hot Topics. And the first story that I want to talk about today is about the unfortunate passing of Sir Richard Attenborough, or should I say Lord Richard Attenborough. Most people, at least in my generation, will remember him as the man who played John Hammond in Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. But he had a very accomplished directing career, and he also had a very long and storied acting career. Probably his most famous directorial effort was 1982's Gandhi, starring Ben Kingsley. That movie won 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and he also took home Best Director for that film. And he actually even went up against Steven Spielberg in both directing and Best Picture for E.T., and he actually beat him, which is funny because 11 years later they re-teamed for Jurassic Park. But yeah, just looking back on his career, all the acting choices that he did, the other directing options that he did, such as Chaplin with Robert Downey Jr., which got Robert Downey Jr.'s first Academy Award nomination. He just had a long and varied career with Hollywood, and it really is great to be able to go back and revisit some of these classic films that some of them I haven't even seen, but some of them I haven't seen in a long time. But yeah, definitely, I recommend going back and checking out any of his classic films. Probably the two most noteworthy would be either Gandhi or Jurassic Park. But yeah, definitely go back and check out a lot of his films because he really was a great talent. And it really just is sad to see him go. But we have a long and varied history of films for him, or of him, I should say, to be able to go and revisit. So I definitely recommend checking that out in order to honor Lord Richard Attenborough. And this next topic is fascinating because it deals with a franchise that we've all grown up with and loved and are potentially bringing back a character who we all remember and revere, only from a few performances. It looks as though Bond 24, as it's currently known as right now, is looking at a henchman role that fills, or at least sounds very similar to a character that we already know. So they're looking for someone who is very physically intimidating. They are looking for someone who is at least 6'2", and he needs to have multiple altercations with Bond throughout the film, as well as a driving sequence. Now, the first thing that jumps to my mind, and I think to the mind of almost everybody else who's written about this story, is that we're getting a new version of Jaws in Bond 24. Now, it hasn't been confirmed if we are going to be getting Jaws, although there was rumors about this about 6 months ago or so, that we may be seeing Jaws pop back up in this franchise. Now, this could just be another henchman type. But the one thing I do need to say is, at least in my own opinion, that is something that has been missing since the 80s Bond, like the late 80s Bond, 70s Bond. We've never, in the 90s, we never really had a good henchman, at least one that would pop up again and again and again. He usually dispatched them throughout the films. So this is something that's very fascinating because minor spoiler for those of you who have not seen Skyfall, but at the end of Skyfall, everything kind of falls into place from where we know it. So Moneypenny is revealed. The proper M is, or not the proper M, but the new M is revealed to be someone who we think is someone who we've seen in the past. Not in the Daniel Craig Bonds, but just in previous Bond franchises such as the Sean Connery one or the Roger Moore one. But having somebody like Jaws come in and having him be not only a physical threat, but a henchman who's almost more powerful than the actual main villain of the film, and someone who could potentially come out and continue on past just this film. I think that's fascinating. I think that's something that these movies need, because outside of Bond and his team of allies, he needs a villain who can keep popping back up. I think that's one thing that's really been missing. So having somebody like Oddjob or Jaws pop up, obviously we're not getting Oddjob because he's not 6'2". But yeah, having somebody like Jaws come back in, I think that's fascinating. The only question is, who are they going to get to play him? I mean, you had what was it, Richard? I'm drawing a blank on his name. It's an odd last name, but his performance as Jaws is always going to go down in history as one of the most memorable. I don't know if we're actually going to get the character of Jaws or just somebody very similar to him, but this to me is just going all in the right direction. We have heard recently that Bond 24 has had to go under some script rewrites, but currently they are looking at casting. They are looking at location scouting. They actually just scouted a location about a week ago where there's going to be some sort of action sequence in a snow-covered mountain range, which I think is actually pretty cool. It's something that it's always accustomed with Bond is having a snow action sequence, preferably in the Himalayas or on some sort of mountain range. That's kind of par for the course whenever it comes to Bond. So I'm glad that we are getting something like that in this next film. I'm very much more looking forward to seeing Daniel Craig return back to the role, because I think he's been one of the best Bonds that we've got. And now that after the end of Skyfall, that he is the Bond that we have come to know, at least status-wise, not personality-wise. He is still very different. But this is something that I think is just very fascinating because it's going to take the franchise into new territory while revisiting familiar territory. And I think that's definitely the right way to go for this. I hope this ends up being actually Jaws and not just another henchman who sounds very similar to him. I hope we actually do get to see Jaws come back because, I mean, not the actual actor, but just the character. I just think it would be a nice little tie-in to the other movies. It would bring not just familiarity, but it will allow you to kind of revisit other characters, perhaps. Like, we could get another Odd Job, or we could get, another, I can't even remember his character's name, but we could get the other character that Christopher Walken played, that villain in the Roger Moore James Bond. So, I mean, having somebody like that come back in, I think is really going to benefit this franchise. And also in the Daniel Craig movies, he hasn't really come across somebody outside of intelligence-wise. He hasn't come across somebody that's physically imposing to him. He's always able to basically just mow through everybody. And I hope that this actually comes out to be true, because this would be a very cool addition to this franchise. I really do hope that it's true. If we get more information about this, I will definitely update you guys on here. This next topic here is about this new Jake Gyllenhaal movie coming out called Nightcrawlers. This movie came out of left field for me. I was hesitant to watch the trailer just because of certain descriptions that I'd read online. But then I watched the first trailer, and then they just released a new trailer online the other day. And oh my God, does this movie look incredible. The performance that Jake Gyllenhaal is giving in this movie is manic, and it is something that we have not seen from this guy yet. And we all know how accomplished of an actor Jake Gyllenhaal is. He's an Academy Award nominated actor, so the guy's got the goods. But this movie is about, he's basically starting off as a freelance photographer for TV stations, trying to get the perfect shot, the perfect video of any sort of crime or accident or anything like that that's going to make the headlines. And this movie really starts to explore the lengths and depths that these types of people, not to say that that everybody out there who does this is like this character. I do believe that there are a few of the people out there who are like this guy. But this really goes to show the morality level of what people are willing to do to get that perfect shot, to get that perfect video clip. Because this isn't really a spoiler because it's in the trailer, but in one of the shots in the second trailer, you actually see him. He and his partner arrive at the scene even before the police do, and they start to rearrange the crime scene. They start to put the bodies in certain spots so they can take better photos. He witnesses a home break-in, and then a murder. He doesn't actually witness the murder, but he hears the gunshot. He sees the flash. He sees the guy leaving. And he gets it all in video, and then he goes into the house and he videotapes everything before the police can even get there, before he even calls the police. And it really just goes to show the lengths that some of these people are willing to go to. It almost reminds me of what a good version of that movie Paparazzi should have been back like 10 years ago, because that movie was just garbage. But it's fascinating that there are people out there who are willing to go to these lengths, that there are people out there who are willing to put other people in harm's way. Like you see in the second trailer for this movie is more action oriented, and you see what he's willing to do. He's literally tailgating police cars as there's other cars are being smashed into and stuff like that so that he can get these shots. Other people be damned. And on top of that, just looking at the manic performance of his it's almost cringeworthy. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that it's almost uncomfortable to watch him because he's doing such a good job. And this is a movie, it comes out, surprisingly, it comes out on Halloween. I don't see this as more of a thriller. I see it more as a horror film. I see it more as a thriller. But, oh my God, does this movie look fascinating. It's got, Bill Paxton's also in the movie. He's showing up everywhere nowadays. Renee Russo's also in the movie. I hope she's having a little bit of a comeback because I would really like to see her make a comeback. I really did like her in the 90s, but, she dropped off. She went a little loopy and dropped off. So the supporting cast in this movie just looks crazy, but the standard is obviously going to be Jake Gyllenhaal. I have the links for both the trailers in the description of this video below, so you can definitely check them out if you haven't seen them. But oh my God, this movie has jumped right to the top of my radar. Wow, does this movie look cool. It's just new, it's unique, it's not a brand, like an established brand. It's not a sequel, it's not a reboot, it is an original story. And this is something that we need more of, at least high profile. I know there are people out there who like to make arguments that now more than ever are we getting more original content, but in the same regard, they need to be more high profile because the majority of people out there only see advertisements for sequels, advertisements for reboots, advertisements for book adaptations. They don't see the advertisements for these new films. And it's mostly because the studios don't have enough, I don't know if it's just enough, I don't know if it's enough faith in the property or enough faith in the fact that it will make back its massive marketing budget, because we live in an age now where the marketing budgets for movies almost trump the actual production budgets. Like you could have a movie, what's a good example? Neighbors. The movie Neighbors with Seth Rogen and Zac Efron. That movie had a production budget, I believe, of between $15 and $20 million, plus or minus. It's around there. Its marketing budget was $35 to $40 million. So its marketing budget was almost double its production budget. And other movies like Paranormal Activity films, they cost less than $5 million to make, but they get massive marketing campaigns. And to get a movie like this, to have it be, or have it have a massive marketing campaign, which I don't know if they are going to do. They may and well do that, but judging by the production companies involved, I don't think that they will do a big one. But this is something that needs to get on more people's radar. These types of films are fascinating because they are almost glimpses into our real world. They're not fantastical. Obviously, they do take liberties with their stories, but for the most part, they are adhering to what certain people actually do go through and what they put other people through in order to get results. So this movie looks absolutely fascinating. I definitely recommend to check out the links in the description below for this trailer because it just blew me away. The first trailer is more psychological. It really gets into his mind. And the tagline of the film is, you got to make that first dollar in order to get the lottery ticket. Or to get the lottery ticket, you got to make that first dollar. You got to make the money to buy it. That's it. To get that ticket, you got to make the money to buy it. And he just keeps repeating that over and over and over again. And it's creepy. But oh wow, this performance looks like it's going to be a standout. I am very much excited for this movie. If we get more information about this film before it releases, I will definitely update you guys on here. And the last topic of the day I want to talk about, this is something I normally don't talk about, but this week is a little bit special for a couple of reasons. So I want to talk about the weekend box office. Now, two things mainly stand out on this. One, Guardians of the Galaxy just retook first place. And this is 3 weeks after its debut. So when it first came out, it was number one. Then its second week, Ninja Turtles beat it out. And Ninja Turtles remained on top for week 3. Now it's in its 4th week now. So with its 4th week of release, this movie has regained the top spot. And I could not be any more happy. And I think everybody at Marvel is dancing their Groot asses off. Because they could not have expected anything better. They really couldn't. This was a risk for Marvel. If this had have been a movie that was $80 million, I don't know if it would have been considered a risk. Marvel's name alone would have brought in that money. The fact remains that they took an unknown property. Most people out there did not know about this property. And they sunk $175 million into the production budget alone. That's not including P&A. That is not the marketing at all. And the marketing on this movie, they did a lot of marketing on this film, which means that they had at least a $45 to $50 million marketing budget minimum. So right there, you're putting the film at $225 million. This movie has already made 251, almost $252 million domestically. And that's not just worldwide. Worldwide, it's made almost $500 million. It's like $480 million or something like that. But this could not have been better for Marvel, because this was an unknown property that has already made back its production budget and marketing budget domestically. That is what is considered a hit. If a movie doesn't make back its production budget domestically, but it makes $1 billion worldwide, they will consider that a partial flop. And they will consider, why did it not make back its money domestically? Why did it make so much more money overseas? I'm looking at you, Transformers 4. But on the flip side of all this, as happy as Marvel is, Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller really have to be disappointed. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, and I even said this in my review, I was scared for how this movie was going to do, because when I went and saw it, there were maybe 10, 15 people in the theater. And I've read a couple of other reviews of the film, and the people said the same thing. They were almost the only people in the theater. Well, the movie had a production budget between $60 and $70 million. It made $6.7 million in its opening weekend. It made about a tenth of what it cost just to make. That's not marketing. That's just to make it. And that is not what they want to see. This is a movie that I thought had a larger fan base than that. Now, maybe it could be that they're just waiting for on demand, or they're waiting for Blu-ray, which in this day and age, that does not equal a success in any stretch of the imagination. The companies, even though they see that it does make a lot of money there, if they want to do another one, they'll try to do it direct to DVD. They don't have to put any marketing into it. But this has to be such a disappointment to them. I don't think in anyone's wildest dreams that they thought it would do this bad. The critical response for it hasn't been that great, and I mean, I can see certain aspects as to why people would think that. I thought it was okay, not great, but I thought it was okay. But I mean, first off, this guarantees we're not going to get Sin City 3. There's no way in hell that anybody's going to try to put any money into this. I think they may have tried to go too ambitious with this film. When you watch the movie, even though it's not photorealistic, they did do a lot more with the backgrounds, with the CG, than they did in the first one. Also, I mean, that was just due to the limitations that they had at the time that they made the first one. But yeah, it's just got to be a shame that this movie didn't do as well as it should have. I mean, taking a look at certain aspects of other films, you know, you look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I feel was a little bit more entertaining than this, and obviously had a much larger audience to adhere to, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is just under Guardians of the Galaxy for this weekend. It was maybe $1 million under, not even, and the number 3 spot was like not even $500,000 below that. So everybody was very similar. Then Sin City 2 debuts in the 8th spot. That is not good. That is not a good sign at all. And it really is just such a shame that this movie didn't do as well, because I thought that it had a much larger fan base. But alas, I guess I was wrong. But it definitely, if you really like kind of the noir, the flashy, hyper-violent movies, even though there is a fair amount of blood, it's done in a graphic sense, like a graphic novel sense, so it's not as gory as it could have been. Even though the violence is implied, you can't really... you don't get the graphic sense of it. You don't get the in-detail sense of it. So there's a market there for it. And I do recommend for people who are interested in those kinds of movies, especially for the dialogue, because I thought the dialogue was pretty unique. It's not how people would talk, but it's just cool to hear people talk like that, because it's almost like from a time long forgotten. And yeah, it's just fascinating. I can see why Robert Rodriguez really does love filling in these worlds, why he loves playing around in these sandboxes. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we're not going to be getting Sin City 3, which is a shame, but I am so very happy to see that Guardians is back on top. This movie deserves it more than I think almost any film this year, and it is vastly approaching Captain America Winter Soldier as being the top domestic grossing film of 2014. I really hope that it does, although it's going to be usurped at the end of the year by either Hobbit 3 or Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. Those are two films that I can easily see beating this film out. And those are the only two that jump to mind that would have a shot at beating it, although I'm probably forgetting a few. If you guys can think of any that I'm forgetting, put them in the comment section below. But yeah, I mean, again, it just sucks that Sin City bombed, because I actually quite enjoyed it for what it was. But yeah, if you guys can go ahead and check it out, if you got a spare $10 lying around, then just go and check it out. I would recommend it. I found it fairly entertaining. But if you had to choose between all the movies playing right now, I would say go and see Guardians again. I'm going to be going to see it again tomorrow for the 7th time. I absolutely love this film. It is so good. It's so entertaining. So much fun. Marvel knocked one out of the park. They hit the parking lot on this one, because this movie was just a knockout. It was so good. But yeah, that's the weekend box office update. I mean, if that's something that you guys want to hear more about, then definitely let me know in the comment section. But if not, I'll just continue doing regular stories, just with the passing of Richard Attenborough. Unfortunately, the news day was a little bit slow, so we didn't get as many topics as we were hoping for. But Wednesday's episode is another day, so we will be getting more topics to talk about on that time. But until next time, you guys enjoy. Or not necessarily until next time, but if we get more information about this, I would definitely update you guys on here. Well, that'll do it for me here on Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. Thank you so much for watching. You guys have been a great audience. Go ahead and click the subscribe button there at the bottom corner. You can get updates whenever we post a new video. You can also find me on Twitter at Niklsun, Niklsun, for all of your movie updates. And you can find me on my Facebook page at facebook.com/movie news with Niklsun. And until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.